بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. We are on page 313. What a good number. So, as you remember, we were talking about the third point, and we reached en qult. The third point was about the fact that for validity of fasting on the day of doubt, it's not necessary to be with the niyyah of months of Sha'ban as a mustahab fasting of last day of Sha'ban, for example. It shouldn't be with the niyyah of months of Ramadan. So if you do it with the niyyah of Sha'ban or with the niyyah of, for example, Sawmul Qadha, I don't know, any other niyyah that you have, maybe you have done nadr, etc., it's okay. It's not just, it has to be with the niyyah of Sha'ban. And if it turns out that it was months of Ramadan, it will be accepted. It doesn't need to be only for the month of Sha'ban. Okay, this was what we discussed. But there is a possible objection in qult. Normally, you know that in our books, when we say in qulta qultu, means if you say this, I would say. So they try to anticipate any objection that might be there, or maybe someone has already made this in their books. They mention and then they answer. Someone may say that in Sahiha, this is Sahiha, it means a hadith which is authentic, of Abdul Karim ibn Amr, we find that he says, I told Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, قلت لأبي عبد الله alayhi salam, إني جعلت على نفسي. What does it mean, إني جعلت على نفسي? It means I made this compulsory. So it means I have made such obligation upon myself. Okay? إني جعلت على نفسي أن أصوم حتى يقوم القائم. This person was so much eager to be with Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. At that time, he said, I would fast till the Qa'im uprises. So, this is the niyyah. Imam alayhi salam said, Som. Okay, so fast. Based on this niyyah, fast. But there are some exceptions. La tasum fi safar. Don't fast when traveling. Walal Eidain. Eid of Adha and Eid al-Fitr, don't fast. Wala ayyam al-tashriq, in the months of the Hajj. Wala, this is the part which relates to our discussion. Wala, which means walal. Wala al-yawm alladhi yushakku fi. Don't fast on the day of doubt. In qult, if you say that this sahih dalatun ala adam jawaz sawm yawm al-shak bi'unwan al-wafa' bin-nadhr. If you say from this hadith sahih, we understand that in Yawm al-Shak, on Yawm al-Shak, we should not fast The question of this person was جعلت على نفسي, means he has made it obligatory for himself, like he has made a vow, he has made a nadr. Imam says don't fast on Yawm al-Shak. So the question was that on Yawm al-Shak you don't need to do niyyah of Yawm Sha'ban. Any fasting other than months of Ramadan is okay, and if it turns out that it was Ramadan, it will be accepted as months of Ramadan. So in Qult wants to say that anything but not Nadhr. You cannot make niyyah of Nadhr on Yawm al-Shak. And therefore, if you make niyyah of niyyah of Nadhr Yawm al-Shak, it's not accepted, and then it cannot count as months of Ramadan. The answer is, first of all, it doesn't say specifically that it was Nadhr. Yes, he has undertaken this, but maybe he didn't recite the Sigha of Nadhr, Sighatul Nadhr, for example. It's not that everyone who makes a promise to himself or herself is doing nadr. Maybe I make a decision, but not in the form of fiqhi, shar'i nadr. Okay? قلت لا نسلم ظهورها في النذر. We don't accept that this sahiha zahiratun fi النذر. There is no such a zuhur. Yes, this person has made a decision to do this every day till Imam Mahdi comes, fast, but it's not necessarily nadr shar'i. لاحتمال أن المقصود مجرد الالتزام والتعهد مع النفس. Maybe he has undertaken and committed himself for, like a promise you give to yourself. وَمَعَهُ تُحْمَلُ عَلَى النَّهْيِ عَنْ صَوْمِهِ بِنِيَّةِ رَمَضَانَ. So, then, if it's not about nadr, what we understand is that Imam wants to tell him, be careful. Don't fast Yawm al-Shak, meaning with the niyyah of Ramadan. At least there is such a possibility that maybe Imam meant don't fast Yawm al-Shak with the niyyah of Ramadan. But suppose we accept لو سلمنا ظهورها في النذر. We say, okay, we accept that it is zahir fi النذر. The first answer is that it's not zahir fi النذر. But even if it is zahir in nadr, would not harm our claim. لو سلمنا ظهورها, يعني ظهور in صحيحة, هذه الصحيحة في النذر فذلك لا يضر بالمدعى. Why? Here a little bit the text is difficult, please pay attention. He says, because our point was about fasting Yawm al-Shak, and it seems that even if this is Zahir fi Naz, that this person has made Naz, he has made Nazr for every day. Okay? Not Yawm al-Shak. If you have made fasting of Yawm al-Shak, you in your Nadr specifically, it shouldn't be a problem. Because this person has made fasting of all the days in the year in a general way, Imam says, don't fast on Yawm al-Shak. I add to this, just in order to make it maybe easier. Maybe you have heard this issue that some, for example, Maraja say, when you are musafir, you cannot fast, of course, months of Ramadan, but you may do nadr and then fast, although it will not be accepted as months of Ramadan, but you can make nadr. But this is especially nadr. If you had done nadr before in a general way, it may not include this day in the months of Ramadan. But if someone is tomorrow traveling in the months of Ramadan, before Zohr, and to a very far place, if he really wants to keep his fasting, then they may permit. Of course, you should check with your marja. If you make a nazr of tomorrow specifically, but not that if someone has done that, okay, I do few days fasting if my hajj is given, but it was general. So imagine something like that. Here he says, لو سلمنا ظهورها في النذر. Even if we suppose, so we suppose we compromise, not that we really compromise. This is salamna, means for the sake of argument, suppose if someone doesn't accept the first answer, okay, we have a if someone doesn't accept the first one, we have a second answer, like a ladder. لو سلمنا ظهورها في النذر فذلك لا يضر بالمدعى. This would not harm our claim that on Yawm al-Shak you can do any fasting with النذر. لأن الكلام فيما لو تعلق النذر بصوم يوم غير معين فأريد الوفاء به في يوم الشك. Here the point is that this person has made nazr of not a specific day. So assume till Imam comes. Now wants to do fasting on the day of Shak. But if someone make niyyah that I want to fast all the days, including Yawm al-Shak, this maybe has no problem. نعم هي على هذا تكون دالة على عدم جواز صوم نفس يوم الشك. Okay, maybe you say then this means that anyway there is a case that a person who has done nadr, either a specific or unspecific, anyway there is a case that Imam says don't fast as nadr. You say okay, then we give the same answer that we gave to the hadith of Qutaybat al-Asha, which we said if it really means that you cannot fast on the day of Shak and it would not be accepted, it has to be modified to Niyatul Ramadan. Otherwise, Tutrah, we don't accept it. You remember? It was last page. We said if you go to line 6, إن أمكن حملها بقرينة موثقة السماع على صوم يوم الشك بنية رمضان. We say Imam Sadiq said Naha Rasulullah, this prohibition of Rasulullah that Imam quoted, we say It must be because this is about niyyah of Ramadan, making fasting on the day of Shak with the niyyah. If you don't accept this, tutra, then this hadith cannot be accepted. Plus, we said there is an issue with the sanad, except you have the mabna of some ulama al-rijal about, for example, because this is from Ibn Abi Umar. Anyway, I don't want to repeat. So, if here you insist that this hadith is zahirun, that fasting as nazr on Yawm al-Shak is batil, we give the same answer. If you insist and you say that hadith as-sama and others cannot help, we say okay, tutra. Al-nuqtatu al-rabi'ah. So nuqtatu al-thalitha remains the same, intact. That on the day of Shak, just make sure you don't do the niyyah of Ramadan. Any valid niyyah, it's okay. And if it turns out to be Ramadan, it will be automatically accepted as months of Ramadan. The fourth point, this is also very important. If it's Yawm al-Shak, and suppose I made niyyah of Sha'ban, and then, is there any? Okay. Suppose I make niyyah of Sha'ban, and then we receive some reliable report that actually this day is month of Ramadan. Do I need to make new niyyah? I had made niyyah of Sha'ban, yeah, because it was Yawm al-Shak. Now at 10 o'clock in the morning, our, for example, Marja says that it has been established for him that this is the first day of month of Ramadan, so you are sure. Of course, if Marja gives hukm, it's definite. If Marja just informs, then it's another issue, but normally people become certain. Or you yourself have received reliable information, which is religiously reliable. So from now on, you know that it is month of Ramadan. Do you need to make a new niyyah and say, okay, this is from now, it's niyyah of month of Ramadan? Or you carry on with the niyyah of Sha'ban? Or you don't make any niyyah? What should you do? إذا كشف أثناء النهار يوم الشك أنه من شهر رمضان فهل يلزم تجديد النية؟ If it is established during the day of Yawm al-Shak that it was from Ramadan, do you need to make a new niyyah? It could be before Zohr, after Zohr. We will discuss inshallah. أجاب صاحب الجواهر بالنفي. Sahib Jawahir, the famous Jawahir in fiqh, Jawahir al-Ahkam, and there are few people that their books are so famous that they are known more with the books that they have, not with their own personal name. So Sheikh Muhammad Hassan al-Najafi is more known as Sahib Jawahir. Even his children and grandchildren are known as sometimes, Jawahiri. So also the same is with Kashif al-Ghita, who had the book Kashf al-Ghita. These people are known more through their books. Sahib Jawahir has said No, there is no need for tajdidun niyyah. Why? He said, because we have itlaq in nusus. Which nusus? Nusus that says, if you make niyyah of Sha'ban and then it turns out that it was Ramadan, it's okay. Doesn't say that if it turns out to be Ramadan after Maghrib. It says it's okay. Doesn't say after Maghrib, doesn't distinguish that if it is before Maghrib and then, for example, before Dhuhr, you have to make niyyah. If it is after Dhuhr, it's not valid. If it is after Maghrib, even without niyyah, is okay. Doesn't make such tafsilat, such distinctions. So, أجاب صاحب الجواهر بالنافية تمسكا بإطلاق النصوص. He relies on itlaq of the text, mutlaq opposite to muqayyad. Because in those texts, which text? The text about sihhatu salat, sawm yawm al-shak, and then being counted as Ramadan later, if they turns out to be done on the day of Ramadan. Islam tadhkur, means lam tadhkur nusus, those nusus, Islam tadhkur i'tibar tajdid niyyah. They have not made such a condition. They didn't say that this is needed. فصرف الصوم إلى رمضان على هذا شرعي لا يحتاج فيه إلى نية. So to turn this fasting into Ramadan, shift it for the months of Ramadan, is something that happens religiously. It's a religious matter, automatically happens. Doesn't need your niyyah. There's no need for niyyah. Sheikh Irwani says, this argument is valid if we had such itlaq that would include at-tabayyun wal-inkishaf athna an-nahar. Because someone may say itlaq is only for after fasting is finished, not whether it is finished or it's still during the day. So, you know, if you remember, I go back to the page 312, we had this, that, for example, we had two muwassaqah from Soma'a. One was before, one was page 310, one was 312. In 310 was this: قلت لأبي عبد الله رجل صام يوما ولا يدري أمن رمضان هو أو من غيره فجاءه قوم فشهدوا أنه كان من رمضان فقال بعض الناس عندنا لا نعتد به. Someone has fasted a day and didn't know it's from month of Ramadan or not, and then some people came and they gave testimony that this was Ramadan. He says some people who are living with us, they say we don't accept this. Imam said Bala, means it's counted, accepted. قلت إنهم قالوا صمت وأنت لا تدري أمن رمضان هذا أم من غيره. They say you fasted and you didn't know it's Ramadan or not. Imam said بلا فاعتد به فإنما هو شيء وفقك الله له إنما يصام يوم الشك من شعبان ولا تصومه من شهر رمضان لأنه قد نهي أن ينفرد الإنسان بالصيام يوم الشك وإنما ينوي من الليلة أنه يصوم من شعبان فإن كان من شهر رمضان أجزى عنه بتفضل الله. So according to Sahib Jawahir says it doesn't say he came to know during the day or later. According to Sheikh Irwani, he says, look, it seems that the question was for someone who had finished that day. Yeah, رجل صام يوما. He finished that day. Although maybe answer of Imam, someone can say it's general, but even the answer of Imam seems that it's more leaning towards something has finished. Yeah. فاعتد به إنما هو شيء وفقك الله له إنما يصام يوم الشك من شعبان ولا تصوموا من شهر رمضان فإن كان من شهر رمضان أجزاء. It seems that it's more about a complete day has been fasted and later it is known that it was from months of Ramadan. So Sheikh Irwani says أنما ذكر أو ذكر صاحب جواهر أو ذكر أنما يتم لو كان إطلاقها إطلاق اون those نصوص شاملا لحالة الانكشاف في الأثناء. If generality that مطلقات had was including the time of turning out to be Ramadan being during the day, وليست كذلك, but there is no such إطلاق, بل تختص بالانكشاف بعد نهاية الوقت وتعميم الإجزاء لحالة الانكشاف في الأثناء ثابت بالأولوية. So he says those mutlaqat are talking about when fasting has finished, the day is complete. If you say, okay, if the day is complete as Yawm Sha'ban, for example, you say it will be counted automatically as Ramadan. Then if someone says, okay, bil awlawiyya, we say if during the day it turns out, it should be better. You know awlawiyya, qiyasul awlawiyya? Qiyasul awlawiyya is like, for example, we say la taqul lahuma uffin. Don't say to your parents off. And off, it is said that it's the minimum thing that can show not being satisfied, not to be happy with someone. Ulama say when we say la taqul lahuma uffun bil awlawiyya, we understand that so you cannot do anything harsher, like na'udhu billah, na'udhu billah. For example, someone beats his parents, for example. This is qiyas awlawiyya. This is not qiyas which is rejected. Here is awlawiyya. Means we know certainly Shari would not allow this. It's yaqini. Here, if someone says, okay, these mutlaqat are about someone who has finished all day and then realized it was Ramadan. Bil awlawiyya, it would include if in the day, during the day, it turns out to be Ramadan. Can you understand why it says bil awlawiyya? If someone understands this, would be great. Why they say bil awlawiyya?
Because the day is already finished. He has to enter Ramadan now.
No, it says it's awlawiyya if it is during the day. If we say that itlaq is for when it is finished, but bil awlawiyya we realize that if it tabayyana during the day, it's okay. Why there is awlawiyya? Why their case becomes stronger if during the day turns out to be Ramadan? Because then part of the fasting can be done with the knowledge of being Ramadan. If without knowing it's Ramadan, you fast as Yawm al-Shak of Sha'ban and it's okay, then if part of it is done with the knowledge of Ramadan, isn't it better? So it's awlawiyya. Okay? If I fasted all day as Sha'ban, you say it's okay. What if I managed to do some of it with the niyyah of Ramadan after it turned out to be Ramadan? So, تعميم الإجزاء لحالة الانكشاف في الأثناء ثابت بالأولوية. Means we don't have a specific hadith about this, for example, or at least we haven't had access to them here. But we say bil awlawiyya, we know this, that if I manage to do it partly after knowing it's Ramadan, must be better. But this is something that, because it is without text. You remember those that we studied usul with each other. We had a very important rule. We said in dalil al-lubbi, you remember we said dalil is either lafzi or lubbi. Lubbi means linguistic. There's a text. Text has zahir. Therefore it can have itlaq, umum, etc. But we said dalil al-lubbi, which is not linguistic, like ijma, for example, or aqli. We should always go for what? For qadr mutayaqqan, which is for minimum. Dalil al-lubbi doesn't have zuhur or itlaq because there is no text. In dalil al-lubbi you always go for qadr mutayaqqan. Qiyas awlawiyat is dalil al-lafzi or lubbi? Is lubbi, is aqli. You have to keep it to the certainty, to qadr mutayaqqan. Qadr mutayaqqan means the amount for which we can be sure is that if it turns out to be months of Ramadan during the day and you make niyyah of Ramadan, yes, then it's okay. Of course, it's before or after the Dhuhr, we will talk about it later. So, al-qadru al-mutayaqqanu minha means min al-awlawiyya halatu tajdid al-niyyah. And why we are concerned about qadr mutayaqqan? Because this is dalil al-lubbi. So far we mentioned argument of people like Sahib Jawahir who say there is no need for tajdidun niyyah. Okay? Now, let's see what's the argument for those who say you must make a new niyyah during the day. If you come to know it's Ramadan, make niyyah of Ramadan, fasting on the day of Ramadan. What is their argument? One argument is this: وَقَدْ يُسْتَدَلُّ لِلُّزُومِ تجدید مثل لزوم تجدید النیه. Sometimes it's argued in this way. بأنه مع انكشاف الخلاف في الأثناء. If in the middle of the day, during the day, it turns out that it was not Sha'ban, it was not what we thought, it was Ramadan. There are two options. Either we don't need any niyyah, Sha'ban is proved to be wrong, we don't need any niyyah from this point on. Or you say, we continue with the previous niyyah as Sha'ban. Okay? This person says that if you don't believe in the need for tajdeedun niyyah, what do you want to do? Either you want to say, from this point on, that I know it is not Sha'ban, I just carry on without niyyah, or you mean that I have to carry on with the niyyah of Sha'ban. Both are problematic. If you say I don't need niyyah from this point on, this is ibadah, wajib ta'abbudi, needs niyyah, qasdul qurba and qasdul fi'l. How can I say, okay, you don't need niyyah Sha'ban and you don't need niyyah of Ramadan. You don't need niyyah Sha'ban because Sha'ban is finished and you don't need niyyah of Ramadan. And if you say, no, keep the previous niyyah. How can I keep previous niyyah when it is known to be finished? I know Sha'ban is finished. So this is one argument that some people have mentioned. It seems that it is from Mustanadul Urwat al-Wuthqa. It seems it is from lectures or lessons of Ayatollah Khuwi rahmatullah alayh. So قد يستدل للزوم التجديد بأنه مع انكشاف الخلاف في الأثناء إما أن لا يحتاج بلحاظ ما يأتي إلى النية. Please see how I read this. لا يحتاج بلحاظ ما يأتي إلى النية means لا يحتاج إلى النية for what? بلحاظ ما يأتي means for what comes from this point on, the remaining hours, there is no need for niyyah at all. Ra'san, you don't need any niyyah. Even maybe someone says, I want to eat, but he just doesn't eat. No niyyah, just doesn't eat, doesn't do anything which breaks fasting. بحيث تجوز نية المفطر. This is one option. That, for example, 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you know that this is month of Ramadan. They say from this point on, there is no need for niyyah. The second option, وَإِمَّا أَنْ يُنْوَى بَقَاءَ النَّفْسِ مَا نُوِيَ حُدُوثًا. Or we say, no, keep the same niyyah that you started your fasting with, like niyyah of Sha'ban. كلاهما باطل. Both options are not acceptable. The first option, that you don't need niyyah anymore. أما الأول فلأنه خلاف فرض خلف. Why it's خلاف فرض? Because fasting is ibadi, needs niyyah. خلاف فرض or خلف means خلاف فرض. خلاف فرض عبادية الصوم بلحاظ جميع آناته. Fasting is ibadah, not a few hours at the beginning. All the time you have to have niyyah. The second option was you continue with the first niyyah. أما الثاني فلأنه مع انكشاف الواقع. When we know that it is Ramadan, not Sha'ban. وأنه معمور بالصوم رمضان, and he knows that he has to fast in the month of Ramadan. How can he still do fasting according to the Amr Zahiri. Amr Zahiri, because according to Istishab, you said it is Sha'ban. But Sha'ban is no longer there. Can you make Istishab when it has turned out to be not the case? For example, I don't know whether my wuzu is remaining valid or not. I continue. But if I know that I had slept, I remember I had slept after I made wuzu, how can then I carry on with Amr Zahiri, which was there for wudu? So these two options are both wrong. So there is only third option, and that is to make new niyyah for the month of Ramadan for the rest of the day. وبهذا يتعين شق ثالث. شق ثالث. What is شق ثالث? وهو تجديد النية بلحاظ ما يأتي. For what comes, make new niyyah. Sheikh Irwani says this argument for tajdidun niyyah is not valid, is not acceptable. Why? Because we go for this first option, but not in the way that you mentioned. We don't say that from 10 o'clock, for example, in the morning, you would have no niyyah at all. We just say that you had niyyah of fasting and niyyah that this is, for example, mustahab fasting for month of Sha'ban. Now, this has gone. But still you can have niyyah of fasting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You say, I continue for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because for ibadiyya, it's enough to say that whatever is applicable to me, I would do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You remember this was a part that we read, I think last week, remaining from this previous session. يرده أن بالإمكان اختيار الأول اختيار الشق الأول فإن المقصود من عدم الحاجة إلى النية يعني from now on هو عدم الحاجة إلى نية خصوص رمضان. Not that we don't have any niyyah of fasting for the sake of Allah. We have niyyah of fasting for the sake of Allah, but not mentioning in our mind or heart that it is Ramadan. Because maybe you thought, it's Sha'ban, then you didn't know that you have to now make it Ramadan, etc. لا عدم الحاجة إلى قصد أصل الصوم تقربا. Not that you don't need to have niyyah of fasting for the sake of Allah at all. Even you said, you may have niyyah of eating but doesn't eat. حتى يقال إنه مناف لفرض عبادية الصوم باللحاظ جميعا. So that then you say, if you are without niyyah at all, then it would not match with the fact that fasting is act of worship from beginning to the end. So what should we say then? He says the best thing is to say that we have no reason for saying that tajdidun niyyah is wajib. Asalatul bara'ah. If someone makes niyyah of fasting as a month of Sha'ban in Yawm al-Shak, and then at 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock, for example, comes to know that it was Ramadan, should continue fasting. The niyyah is fasting, the niyyah is seeking nearness to Allah, but we are not sure whether he needs anything more than this. We cannot say anything is obligatory unless we have good dalil. Otherwise, asalatul bara'ah. Of course, we have to discuss, whether it's making difference before Dhuhr, after Dhuhr, all these things. We are just finishing point 4. Inshallah, there are more points to come. So, the idea is that if someone makes the niyyah of fasting of Sha'ban, for example, or qadha of Ramadan, or nadhr, whatever was okay to do it in Yawm al-Shak, then during the day it turns out to be actually in the months of Ramadan, Sheikh Irwani says there is no need for renewing niyyah, making a new niyyah, in the sense that you say on top of that I am fasting for the sake of Allah, you say it's Ramadan from this point on. Even if you continue, it's okay. Even if, for example, someone is sleeping or anyway heedless, it's okay. Even intentionally you don't need. So why asadatul bara? Some people have argued in another way which we didn't, not we, but he didn't accept. And some people like Sahib Jawahir, they said itlaq is the reason that there is no need for tajdid niyyah. We had question about itlaq. If we have itlaq, then we don't need usul amaliyah. Bara'a is usul amaliyah. Itlaq is dalil, it's not amali. It's fiqahati and precedes usul amali. You know that usul amali are only when we don't have access to qawaid umumi for establishing the hukm awwali waqi. As you see, you need to exercise lots of things from ilm usul, and this is one of the beauties of this text. Points from ilm usul, ilm rijal, we have to repeat, and this helps you to inshallah master these rules inshallah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. May Allah bless you inshallah. Is there any question?
So if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute and ask, and inshallah Sheikh can answer.
I hope you have started your mubahasa groups, inshallah. Okay, so inshallah we end with a quick dua faraj. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكن أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. اللهم اشف مرضانا وارحم موتانا واقض حوائجنا بحق محمد وآل محمد.
I think we have one question that's on the chat. I think Sister Isra, if you'd like to go ahead and ask your question.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Hassan Awashi, sorry, I was trying to type it in, but just a quick question about the niyyah. So Sheikh Irwani was trying to prove that it would not be necessary to renew the niyyah. So in this case, are we talking about someone who finds out that it is Shahr Ramadan and they insist on continuing with the old one, or it's just that they don't make something like a conscious renewal of their niyyah?
Yeah, so he knows that it's not Sha'ban, so he's not making niyyah of Sha'ban, but maybe he thinks that I cannot make niyyah of Ramadan, or for any reason he doesn't make niyyah of Ramadan. Is it a problem? No. But if he makes niyyah of Ramadan, of course, better. There is no problem. But it's just whether it's necessary to do tajdidun niyyah or not.
Yeah. I mean, because it just seemed to me that it goes back to what he had said earlier. I think it's page 309 where he says نعم البحث عن ذلك قليل الجدوى, it's not worth drawing out بأن غدا من رمضان لأن علمه المذكور لا ينفك عادة عن قصده لصوم رمضان. So if a person knows that it is Shahr Ramadan, isn't it something that's just automatic? Now I know that it's Shahr Ramadan.
Yeah.
Not in the sense of like insisting on something that's already expired.
Yeah, but some people may think that I cannot do this niyyah now, and therefore they don't do it. If someone thinks that it's risky or whatever, and just gets stuck till asked question, then that's it. Otherwise, most of the people, I think, from that point on, they switch to months of Ramadan. But if someone has not heard such mas'ala and is not familiar and is just stuck, he knows it's not Sha'ban, he doesn't know whether in the middle of the day he can make it Ramadan, so he just keeps fasting with qurbatan ilallah. This is the case.
Thank you.
You're welcome.